Okay. So I'd like to welcome Lynn Azarki from the Kidsbridge Tolerance Center in Trenton, New Jersey. And she is the author of a new book called The Empathy Advantage. So thank you, Lynn, for joining San Francisco Bay Area moms today.
Well, I'm thrilled to fly across the country virtually and be with you.
Yeah, it's kind of amazing to be able to get to have these experiences now, probably more so than we maybe ever would have before.
Yeah, so, well, it's a silver lining.
That's right.
We need some silver linings.
That's right. Oh my gosh. So we're here today to talk about racism and the steps that parents can take to help their young children appreciate diversity and learn to be inclusive. And I know I do want to address some of the bullying stuff as well later on, or as that kind of comes up, that is perfect as well. But why is empathy important in reducing racism, first of all?
So let me talk about very young children. Kidsbridge educates children starting at 4 and 5. So this will surprise some parents. Racism and preferring in-group to out-group starts at 3. Bullying starts at 3. Children see color and they, we have a bias to be with people who look like us. But what I'd like to share with parents, caregivers, and teachers today is that it's never too early to start these discussions. In fact, if you start discussing this with your child developmentally appropriate at 3, 4, 5, all the later discussions become easier because, they have a foundation. So I think the most important message is start early, be comfortable, read stuff, go online and also read stuff. And, my child just isn't mature or old enough. It doesn't, the research says the opposite. So I'm here to share that empathy can be taught, that you can do it. You as a parent, you can do it in teeny little easy increments every week. You don't have to do it every day, but I'm asking that you set some time aside because the benefits to you, particularly with race, and in the Kidsbridge Center, we call it diversity appreciation. We want them, yes, to see differences. Differences, the little kids say, differences make the world a better place, to embrace it, welcome it, teach it, to prompt questions. When you're, from 3 to high school, when you're watching media or you're on the internet, to formulate these questions and these conversations to make yourself more comfortable, but never, never too early to teach about empathy, racism, differences, bias, implicit bias. So let's get started. And the book that I wrote is purposely for that, to let teachers, parents know you can do it. It's not that hard. Start early.
Right. And I think it's important, and you mentioned it too, that it's not a one and done conversation. It needs to be something that's woven into daily life, teachable moments, lessons, and not even that moment, the kind of like, what if, or kind of a hypothetical or thinking of situations. So when a child is put into something, they have some of those tools to use.
So that's another tip in my book, that, you're in the car for 20 minutes riding somewhere. There's a man, a woman, a child on the street that has less or more than you. If less, why, is that man walking down the street with no shoes? Why are people lined up at the food bank? Why? That in a very gentle way, and again, developmentally appropriate, that you get your kids to walk, we call it walk in the shoes of other people. That creates empathy, seeing the world around you, especially reading literature, right? So here's a tip. You read a story and then you close the book and you leave the room. No. It's time for a couple of empathy moments.
Right.
How was that character feeling? How was the other character feeling? What would you do in that situation? Was the boy being kind? Was the little girl being nasty? to have a discussion to flesh out the emotions, because as we know, reading literature improves empathy. How easy it is to have we're all busy, right? A 5-minute conversation after your
Right.
reading hour. Cut your reading hour 5 minutes shorter so you can help your child process, discuss. It just makes for a richer parent-child, caregiver-child moment and promotes empathy. And again, we know that we can increase empathy, except for psychotic people.
Right, right. And that's a whole nother, that's
That's
another
another
story. That's right.
discussion.
So what are some of your, you have several other tips in your book, and your reading hour is one of them. What are some of the other ones that you encourage parents to do and
So I
caregivers?
think one of the most important tips I have is active listening. We're all busy. I know, I get that. But active listening, that again, and maybe every day, again, carve out 5 or 10 minutes, get off your phone. You know, you're role modeling being on your phone with your kids. Face to face, sit down at a table, sit down on the floor, look at your child. And even if it's for 10 moments, your child will never forget this. Remember, with COVID, they're losing their face-to-face interpersonal skills. Put all things, no phone, and it could be at a meal, it could be in the morning, at night, a time. You can have an empathy time, face-to-face, listening and reflecting what you're hearing for your kids. Of course, some other tips, we come from a society of overscheduling kids. So now that we're spending more time at home, it's a blessing, it's a silver lining. You may, in this time of COVID, be stressed, and they're stressed, and maybe you're like spending too much time together, but try to make it calmer, less stressful, less anxious. I just had a new idea, like an empathy bench or spot. If a member of the family is feeling stressed, like go to that place and say, I need help. I'm overwhelmed by my job. I'm overwhelmed by my homework. My friend said this, online, and I'm really distressed. That the family can really pull together as an empathy unit, walking in the shoes of other members of the family. And then let's not forget the community. So many people are challenged by, hunger and, food, and some people are worrying at this moment where they're going to pay the rent, that we need to walk in the shoes of people outside of our family and model that for your kids, that you care about people who can't pay rent or don't have food. And there is something you can do about it. It's not really right enough to feel bad for them. Empathetic action that you can help other people, and we can help other people.
Sure. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I know that service learning aspect is one of your tips, and so that's perfect. But that also brings in that kind of developmentally appropriate, like when you could, talk about it with your 4 or 5-year-old, and then if you've got your middle school teenagers, that they can translate that into action, and they can.
So that, Tracy, is a really good question. Let me share a story with you, something I learned in the Tolerance Center. So we got a grant to do this great grant, high and low income kids. We made sandwiches for our local soup area kitchen, and I did a pre and a post measurement on empathy. So I was aghast because they came in to make sandwiches for the kitchen, and the empathy didn't go up. And what did I do wrong? What did I do wrong? So here's the thing with service learning. You need to add empathy, right? And again, parents can do this in their homes. It's one thing to tell them to make sandwiches for the poor, but I never did the discussion. I never did the prompt. What does it feel like to be hungry? What does it feel like to see your parents making decisions between electricity and food, to walk in the shoes? And again, let's not traumatize our kids, but there is a way to have conversations, especially upper elementary, middle, and high school, to walk in the shoes of those who have less. So empathy prompts discussions.
Exactly. And it did for you. That's amazing too.
Yeah. The whole point is that I've learned from my mistakes, that now I feel that I can coach and, help parents and other people.
Yeah, even more so. Well, and that brings in an interesting point too, is that media aspect and that media literacy, because, you do get your older elementary, middle, high school kids who are seeing things online whether it's, you know, a news clip, misinformation, a meme, something, you know, of that nature. And that can be detrimental to the child, but can be a teaching moment as well for.
Yeah, so especially, you know, I mean, at Kidsbridge and what I've learned about bullying and cyberbullying, so we need to be empathetic online, to teach our kids and role model that whatever you put online is permanent, and it hurts a child 24/7. It's not like us when we left the school at 3 and we were done. So to be sensitive and empathetic to the lasting permanency of harm you can cause to other people. You can't regret it the next day. So I have probably a chapter on media, but like 10 media tips for people. What comes to mind obviously is mealtime, screen-free times. Research says that like 2 hours before you go to bed, like it really stimulates the brain, that the kids can't go to sleep. I think you know, Tracy, by now that the kids are most of them spending more time on media than sleeping.
Mm-hmm.
I'm hoping that kids are getting more sleep in COVID time, but model turning your phone off, and don't talk to your kids with your phone in your hand. I
Right.
mean, what are they going to learn from that, right?
Yep. Yep.
So we really, teaching these things helps all of our children, all of our, you know, communities with our behavior online. And as you know, like just, you know, getting really nasty. But I think in our society, as parents, we forget about other people's children, right? So we want to set role models in our homes and care about other people's children. Well, it just rises us all up.
It does. And it's kind of like that ripple effect. If you make a ripple in your home, you know, it's just going to expand and more people
Yeah.
are going to be affected.
Yeah, that's
by
a
that.
beautiful analogy.
Yeah.
Ripple
Yeah.
effect. I love that.
Yeah. Now, what also about kindness? What role does that have in building empathy? I mean, it seems pretty obvious, but what would you say to that?
So the way we build to kindness and compassion, and that's a really good question. It sort of comes to it from another direction. That step one is that what we call it self-compassion. So let me just take self-esteem and put it to the side.
Okay.
I raised my kids with, you know, self-esteem, need to build the self-esteem. And that's really not the concept we want to embrace anymore. We want to start with self-compassion. What is that? That a child feels they are loved, protected, that they can make mistakes. They don't have to be perfect. I can't tell you how many years or decades I felt, you know, that I had to be perfect. Let's teach our children that learning from mistakes is okay. So self-compassion. With that platform, build the next one, empathy for others. So some research says you can't be kind and compassionate for others till you're kind and compassionate for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
But I think in some cases, kids are different. They might not be kind and compassionate to themselves, that it's easier to be kind and compassionate to others.
Mm-hmm.
So there's sort of that dichotomy. In fact, one of the tips in the book, and I forget who I got this from, is that you need to treat yourself like a friend, like you would treat a friend, right?
Mm-hmm.
To raise the self that you're worthy of that much respect. You know, in the Kidsbridge Tolerance Center, we get epiphanies from middle schoolers. And this is such a powerful thing to say, that they didn't realize that other people were bullied. Now, they know that other people are bullied, but they don't emotionally know that other people are bullied. So children leave the Tolerance Center, of course, which is closed now for COVID, feeling like they're not the only one. So that's just such a powerful lesson. So again, to circle back to your question, empathy for myself, self-compassion, empathy for others, and then kindness and compassion are acts of being kind to others. So we call that in the empathy world, empathic action. But I think it really wells up from you feel good about yourself, you want to help others, and then kindness and compassion would be an act,
Right.
where you actually consider people who have less. Let's bend to exclusion, not invited to that party, you know, not invited, that expect it, right? It happens to all of us. We all remember that party, you know, we weren't invited to, that we discuss that with our kids to walk in the shoes of a child excluded, walk in the shoes, say, of a new girl who comes to school, or a COVID situation that arises, discuss it, and then extend and build the empathy that we are kind and compassionate to others, not just our family, not just our tribe, but people in our community, in the state, in our country, people surviving a hurricane, the people homeless from a fire. I mean, you can send $25 and show your kids what they're doing. You're teaching them that they can do something. And that's another aspect, is like a lot of kids don't have hope that one person can make a difference. One person can make a difference, and your children can make a difference. Show them how.
Right, right. Oh, that's really powerful. Very powerful. Now, you alluded, and we talked a little bit about like family time, family meeting, but specifically family meetings. What can that look like, especially for maybe across the ages and stages, like a 4 or 5 year old, if you have that, or even the 3-year-old. What kinds of things could you do?
So family meetings, some of the things I already said, face to face, can be 20 minutes. So here's the factor I've learned in education, right? Educate, educate, educate. The most powerful thing you can do to teach a child something is to make it fun.
Yeah.
Family meetings have to be fun, right?
Yep.
Oh God, no, we're talking about empathy this week again. No, make it fun. Okay. So you'll have your own fun ideas. Be engaged to ask each family member what they would like to do, how to make it fun. Okay. So another rule is every person, adult or child, participates equally. You go around and ask everyone a question. Start with icebreakers. What's your favorite color? What do you want to do today? Do you want, nature walks, zoos, like plan activities together, but don't dictate to your kids, listen to your kids. Again, those empathy moments, you could bring a book to a group. You can ask them for things that you haven't thought of, but it is a time for family to bond and to be this kind, compassionate, walking in the shoes, like, I'm really stressed, about blah, blah, blah. So the family meeting is also a place to work out problems. I mean, a parent today, right? Trying to work and be a teacher at the same time, stressful for adults. So a parent is so powerful when they share with their kids that they are stressed. Parents, you're not perfect. It's a stressful time. It breaks this myth and illusion that we have to be perfect growing up. I wish my parents had done that. So share your vulnerability as an adult with your kids in these family meetings. So when I'm teaching in the Tolerance Center, and we're also remote into classrooms now, I always share with the kids, when I was 7, this happened to me. This made me, I was excluded. I was stressed. I was anxious. So or a teacher that shares this moment that they, my teacher, my mother, my father, my grandparent, they're human. I don't have to be perfect, right? I don't have to have all the answers all the time. So these family meetings, by being your real vulnerable self with empathy, leads to kindness, leads to compassion. And I think it really strengthens the family unit. You are for each other. And then problems. So problems in the house, right? There's not enough Wi-Fi, or there's not enough of some sort of resource, or this child's not teaching that other child. Solve those problems together, because the family meeting, you're not emotional, you're not upset. You might be holding something you want to discuss, but to not, when you're, look, people scream at each other. They're upset, anxious, and stressed. Not to solve problems then. Okay, you say, okay, we're all upset. Tomorrow, we're going to solve that at the family meeting.
Right.
So that's how I regard family meetings.
That's great. Well, and I think parents need to realize that putting the work in now is going to pay off dividends, even when it comes to the teen year. I have 2 teenagers. So when, they really need you. They need you for something important. They know they can come to you because you're going to be real and honest. And I think more importantly, that they know they can come to you, that you're open to those conversations and those issues, and they're not seeking the advice and help of someone else, or someone who could be potentially harmful. So
Yeah, and I think we've all learned this, like, and I did this wrong, I think, with my kids. Like, I was always trying to solve their problems, right? Like, oh, you could do this, that, and this. And so what we've learned in the research, particularly with bullying, is sometimes, like for a child who is bullied, sometimes all you have to do is listen.
yeah.
In the research for bullying, we don't call children we don't call them victims, we call them targets. The most powerful thing you can do for an excluded or bullied child as a peer is just to listen to them. So, parents, caregivers, don't feel you have to solve all of your kids' problems. Sometimes it's enough to listen. You may not know how to do that right away, but try to lean a little bit more to the listening and see how that works for you.
Yeah, there's power in silence and just listening.
In all things.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's very hard to do, but sometimes
it strengthens a relationship.
That's right. I do want to circle back to one other thing, kind of going back to the racism discussion.
Sure.
One thing you say, and I think more parents could learn from this and hear from this, but is the I don't see color approach, because you get that a lot, that oh, I don't see black and white, but that you say that just doesn't work.
Well, if I'm telling you that kids 3 and 4 see color, an adult says I don't see color, the kid is like this child is black, this child is brown, this child is from this country. It just doesn't make sense. So using the facts that children do see color is a springboard. So when black and brown people hear, I don't see color, I am not a racist, it's not authentic, and it really doesn't help the situation. I mean, today with Black Lives Matter, we black and brown people are asking us as white people to be anti-racist. So it's not enough to say, these statements, because they're hollow. So in your home, what are you doing with your children to be an anti-racist? So again, in my book, there are, and this is before Black Lives Matter, because, Kidsbridge teaches diversity appreciation, right? Which we started with, embrace others who are different from us. It's the spice of life. So that there are so many things parents can do. So literature, there's so many more books now with black and brown characters as main characters, not just, white kids. So from a very early age, 5, 6, 7, there are books. You can expand the world and reduce bias and prejudice with your children. A child, there are some TV programs, right? But there are programs about what it is like to grow up as a Black child in the city, what it is like to be a brown person in this country, and somebody says, where are you from? What is it like to be a Native American? People who were here first, and the wretched history of genocide for Native Americans. What is it like to be a Native American child on a reservation today, or in the city? Most Native Americans live in cities actually today. So again, circling back to the walking in the shoes early, there's literature, books 5, 6, 7, again, there's resources. I have online actually at empathyaadvantagebook.com, so people can just zoom in on that right away. Again, start early. There's a world of resources to share. There's a lot of websites now that talk about race. I mean, instantly there's a lot of anti-racist, anti-bias resources, videos, documentaries, for middle school and high schoolers. There's so much stuff to share now, even though you're stuck at home. So make it an empathy moment, an anti-racist moment, and have these conversations with your kid, and you'll learn from your children.
That's right. Oh my gosh. Every day.
Right?
every
Right? They
day.
teach us. I
That's
mean,
right. That's right.
right.
Yeah. And if you're not open to that, you're sorely missing out.
Yeah, it's a partnership. It's a new partnership with your kids. And I think the more you respect and esteem your kids, the more rise to the level. You know, your partner's stuck at home. So, you know, let's feel something for the people who have less than us. Just to walk in the shoes of an African and American mother in my area, she has boys in their 20s, and from all the stuff that's going on, they are in their 20s and they are afraid to leave the house.
Yeah.
So what does it feel like to be that child in their 20s? Oh, they're not afraid. No, they are afraid. They're afraid to be in a
Right.
car and pulled over. And what is it like to be that Black mother who worries about her boys every day? We need to feel that in our heart and do something that's anti-racist.
Right. Excellent. What a great place to leave it off on. Thank you. What a great